All right, we are diving into a story today that honestly feels like it was ripped straight from a Hollywood script, not a news report. We're going to break down a truly shocking event, all based on the source material we've gathered.
I want you to just stop and think about this for a second. What if the United States sent its military into another country, another sovereign nation, and just arrested its president?
Well, according to the sources we're looking at, on January 3rd, that wild hypothetical, it became a reality. So, let's really get into how this absolutely world-shaking event went down.
Okay, here's our game plan. We're gonna tackle this in 5 key parts. First, we'll look at the lightning-fast raid itself. Then we'll dig into the official story, the lawful arrest, and the absolute legal chaos it kicked off. After that, we'll see what was happening on the ground in Caracas. And finally, we're gonna talk about the big one.
So first up, the flash raid. And let me tell you, this was not some quiet, sneaky operation. This was a massive military action that unfolded under the cover of darkness and sent shockwaves around the globe.
Just look at this timeline. It shows you how incredibly fast this whole thing happened. It all kicks off at 2 in the morning. U.S. Special Forces hit the presidential palace. Almost immediately after, you've got explosions across Caracas as other military sites are taken out. And then by 4:30 a.m., that's just 2.5 hours later, President Trump is on social media announcing the capture. The speed, the coordination is just staggering.
And here it is, the actual announcement. The language here is so important. It's triumphant, right? It's framed as this decisive, successful, large-scale strike. And when he says large-scale, he is not kidding. We're talking about more than 150 U.S. aircraft in the sky, a power cut across the entire capital city. And get this, reports say it was an elite Delta Force unit that broke into a steel-fortified safe room. On top of that, you had airstrikes on Venezuelan air and naval bases. This was way, way bigger than just a simple arrest.
So, how in the world do you justify an operation like that? Well, the official story from the White House is that this was simply a lawful arrest. Let's take a closer look at that claim.
Okay, so the official line is this. This wasn't an act of war. No. This was just a really, really big law enforcement mission. The whole justification hinges on a U.S. Justice Department indictment against Maduro for things like narco-terrorism, basically accusing him of using his government to help run a global drug cartel.
And this slide, this really lays out the central problem, doesn't it? On one side, you've got the official label, law enforcement mission. And on the other, you've got the military reality. 150-plus aircraft, airstrikes, and elite special forces. It's a massive contradiction that, as you can imagine, set off alarm bells for legal experts all over the world.
Which, of course, brings us to the absolute legal firestorm that erupted because, no surprise, the international community wasn't exactly buying the whole law enforcement story. The first major challenge is pretty straightforward. As law professor Matthew Waxman points out, having a criminal indictment from the U.S. doesn't suddenly give you the authority to use your military to overthrow another country's government. It just doesn't work that way.
And this wasn't just an American debate. The former head of MI6 in Britain, Sir John Sawers, flat out said that in the UK, an operation like this would never, ever have gotten the green light. He called it a real stretch legally, which, is about as close as a former spy chief gets to saying, this is completely insane.
But the most damning criticism probably came from Jeffrey Robertson, a former president of the UN's War Crimes Court. I mean, he did not mince words. He called it a breach of the UN Charter and labeled it the crime of aggression, which he calls the supreme crime. And what he's talking about is this right here, Article 2.4 of the UN Charter. This is basically one of the fundamental rules of the modern world. It was written specifically to stop one country from doing exactly what the US is being accused of doing here. So while all the lawyers and diplomats are arguing, back in Caracas, things are descending into total chaos. The raid left a giant power vacuum, and nobody, and I mean nobody, seemed to know who was actually in charge. So who's running Venezuela? It's the million-dollar question, right? On one hand, you have Vice President Delcy Rodriguez stepping up publicly, saying she's in charge and demanding Maduro's release. But then, behind closed doors, the U.S. Secretary of State claims she's actually willing to do whatever the U.S. wants. And then, to make it even more confusing, President Trump just comes out and says, we're going to run the country for a while. It's a complete and utter mess. So what is really going on here? Is this whole thing really just about narco-terrorism? Or is there something else, something bigger at play? And that, my friends, brings us to the elephant in the room,
oil. Let's just start with a number. 303 billion. What on earth is that? That is the number of barrels of proven crude oil reserves sitting under Venezuela. And as this chart makes crystal clear, that's the largest known reserve in the entire world. It absolutely dwarfs what the United States has. We're talking by a factor of nearly 6. It's a staggering amount of wealth. And if you think connecting the raid to the oil is just some conspiracy theory, well, this isn't speculation. President Trump himself laid it all out at a news conference. He spelled out the plan. Have major U.S. oil companies go in, rebuild Venezuela's broken infrastructure, and, in his own words, start making money. So at the end of the day, what was this all about? Was it a justified law enforcement mission to take down a narco-terrorist? Was it a flagrant violation of international law, the supreme crime of aggression? Or was it quite simply a strategic power play for the biggest oil prize on the planet? The sources lay out a compelling case for all three. The only thing that's for sure is that in one single night, the world changed, leaving us with a question that people will be debating for years to come.